All right, everybody, welcome to the Soulscast. This is the Dark Souls, or the Souls series podcast. This is episode 6, so it's pretty cool. We've been doing this for some time, I gotta say.
Yeah, 6 weeks.
Yeah, I know. We've been keeping up with it. One hiccup was yesterday. I had a lot going on, so we couldn't get it done yesterday. So, hey, next day, why not,
Yeah.
So for those of you that are just listening, I'm using Periscope for the first time for this. So it's like people can, listen to the MP3 later, or watch it on YouTube, SoundCloud, whatever later. But when we're recording these, which is usually Monday nights, maybe Tuesday, I'll start a Periscope where people can watch live, add questions if they want to, whatever. Maybe go with the topic and we'll just talk about that.
Yeah, very cool. I like it.
Yeah. So, and then us again, Adam Blue, I'm the host. Shane's the host also. I don't really like the term co-host because it's like you're just as much as a host as I am. That's how I see it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's, I think you do more for the podcast than I do. You set up the show notes.
The technical stuff. Yeah, that's just kind of fun for me. But yeah, so, and then you can find me, obviously, YouTube Blue Gamer and all that, Twitter, Adam Blue, Instagram, Adam R. Blue, and then your stuff?
Kalameet on Instagram, Kalameet. The same on Twitter, replace the L with a 1. YouTube, I have a YouTube channel that I'm posting Bloodborne boss fights on right now. Search Shane Norton. I'm the picture with a beer, so pretty easy to find. And yeah, that's all my social media stuff.
Cool. Okay. And just something else I want to add, if you guys are interested. So yeah, he's doing his Bloodborne bosses right now, and that has gotten. Him doing that got me to upload my Dark Souls 2 bosses, which I have been, and I beat the game, so now they're going to come out every other day. But alongside with that, I'm playing through Demon Souls right now, and so I'm going to have some uploads, and I'm actually going to upload every second I play of Demon Souls. I don't know why. I'm just going to try it like that. So far, 2 of the videos, I have them, broken up depending on what's going on. Some of them have commentary. So some I've talked as
excellent.
I played. It's really hard to do. I don't know how some people could do that, but oh my God, is it difficult? Anyway, okay, so getting back to this episode, Bloodborne tactics. I figure, we've covered Bloodborne in general. Now I wanted to go over some tactics, strategy. There are, the game hasn't come out that long ago, so some people are, maybe they just got back into it again after, a new game, or they're just now getting to it. So I wanted to start with, let's say, so Shane, in Bloodborne,
yeah,
what was your weapon of choice, and how'd you use it?
I've had 2 weapons of choice, really. My first playthrough was, I think, really 100% the Hunter Axe. And, it's one of the starting weapons, and it worked really well for me. Especially, it had a really good range. That charge attack, you charge R2, and he kind of does he swings it around a couple times. Super powerful. It was a pretty powerful weapon in general. Kind of slow, but I didn't mind that. Towards the very end of my playthrough, when I was doing the later Chalice dungeons, I got the Stake Driver, which is the weapon you get from the Powder Keg badge, which you get from that guy.
The Canehurst?
No, the guy at the top of the clock tower in Old Yarnum that has the big machine gun that's shooting at you the whole time.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
So in my first playthrough, I got that, and I thought it looked like a really cool weapon. It looks awesome, and it's pretty interesting. But I never used it because I was kind of nervous to get out of my comfort zone with the axe. But eventually, I was like, whatever. I need to try something else. So I started using that towards the end of doing the Chalice dungeons, and I played through an entire New Game Plus with the Stake Driver, upgraded to plus 10, and it kicks ass. It's awesome. It's real fast. You can get a million hits in. It doesn't hit as hard as the axe, which I also had to plus 10, but you can hit so much faster, and you can kind of almost stun some bosses and enemies into just not being able to move because you're just hitting them, so fast over and over and over again. So those are basically what I've used. I don't think I've really used anything else. And then as far as the guns, I picked the blunderbuss and I basically just stuck with that. I only use it for visceral anyway, so yeah, that's basically all I've used.
Okay. Yes. Speaking of axe, I actually, when I first played, I used the axe, and then I was having a hard time with the game, so I decided to play it again. And then I went with the threaded cane. When I decided to redo it, went with threaded, and I like the threaded cane better, so that was my weapon of choice. With the threaded cane, for me, I felt it was an easier weapon. I see it almost as like a, and I could be wrong, but I see it as like a really, really beginner's weapon because of the range I can get with it. Like, I can really be far back, and I can get a wide range of guys. So, like, let's talk about the beginning bonfire area. There's so many enemies, right?
Yeah.
And I was just able to use that to just whip, get a whole bunch of guys, and just keep on going. And so I used that for nearly most of the game. And then it got to the point where I was using the Ludwig's Holy Blade. I believe that's what it's called. So, and I loved its trick form where it's the giant sword, and you hold R2 for the charge, and it does that lunging attack. And that, when I was playing, I near the end of the game, I was mainly using that for just the enemies, for getting around. But bosses, it would always go back to the whip. For some reason.
Yeah.
Even though it takes more hits, the whip just has that range, when I'm fighting a boss.
No, the other range is awesome.
I'm trying to think of a boss, for example. It could be anyone, like the, what is it? The fire dog or whatever that's in, like, the Defiled Chalice. That boss is, like, really hard.
Yeah.
With the whip, I can kind of be at a distance and at an odd angle. I don't have to look head on, and my whip is still going to hit. And I think it's cool. I don't know if, again, I almost think that's like an easy weapon to use, but it's also hard because it takes more hits to do things, so you're going to be spending more time. But I see a lot of the bosses you mentioned from like Defiled Chalice bosses, or even the Chalice bosses. Like, that's when you realize the weapon you have, like, what is the best weapon? You know what I mean? For you at that point.
Yeah.
And then you were talking about the stake driver, and what I think is cool about the stake driver is that the weapon itself is lore. Because I think that has to do with the vampires. That's why I brought up Canehurst, but I think it has to do with something, because Canehurst is where all the vampires are. And so I guess the guy at Old Yarnum was like a vampire hunter or something. I don't know. Again, it gets in that lore stuff. I love it. I love it to death. Anyway, and then back to R2 and the weapons, charging R2, using R2. That was the best way to go and all that. We can move on if there's nothing else to touch on with that. I wanted to, so kind of moving on after talking about, like, the different ways you can use these weapons. So what Bloodborne has that the other Souls games didn't have is, like, the trick weapons. So, like, pretty much any weapon had, like, a second form, okay? Which, in a way, in Dark Souls you had the two-handed, weapons. You can switch to do two-hand, and then, because at the same time, when you're doing your second form, you're pretty much, you can't shoot. And I don't know if that's with every weapon. I'm pretty sure. But is it with every weapon? I don't remember.
I don't know if it's with everyone. Like this, I don't think it is with the stake driver, because that's always, it's on your arm, so it's like a one-handed weapon regardless.
And obviously the whip was threaded cane. Yeah, you can go into. So I think that's pretty cool. So it kind of like, even though there's that complaint that there's not that many weapons.
Yep.
It then adds that variation, like different play styles. I can say with the threaded cane, I rarely used its cane form, if ever. Once at that point I had the Holy Blade, and then if I needed something short and sweet,
you just use a blade.
But so, and let's see did I have any notes in here? I actually didn't have any notes. I think you had some stuff to say about that.
Oh yeah, I wrote like
A couple books.
4 paragraphs on this part. Yeah, like I always do. I do really like the trick weapon gameplay. It essentially, doubles the amount of weapons there are in the game because all the trick weapons, the second forms, are usually very, very different from the first form. So I thought, like, all the animation looks great when you're transforming them, and
Yes.
especially if you do it in the middle of a combo, like 1 or 2 hits with the one weapon, like 1 or 2 hits with the regular axe, and then you transform it into the long axe, and it does this nice little animation, and you can continue attacking, and then you can transform back, and it's all. I wrote breathtaking, and maybe that's a little much for a video game. Maybe it's a little bit silly, but it really looks cool, and it's very fluid, and it's something I haven't really seen in at least a game like this. Certainly not in a Souls game. So is awesome.
Okay, so after playing the other Souls game, breathtaking's not taking it too far because, the Souls games is not about combo combat really. It's more about
not at all.
Landing hits and all that. So you can play through all Bloodborne without using like the trick weapon combo, but if you add that in, whereas you're in, one form you're hitting and then you do trick weapon second form, it's like it adds more, not only style, but it's like technique. So it's like there's a payoff there.
Definitely.
Your technique is taking off more damage and it has some really cool style to it. I agree that is an amazing part.
Yeah, style's real high in this game.
Yeah.
And as far as the weapon list, I know I've complained about it, and a lot of people have complained. It's really small. I think it's like 15 weapons or something. Mm-hmm. But every one almost is real unique from one another. Mm-hmm. There's not like in the other Souls games where there's like 10 different great swords. It's basically one sword, Ludwig's, which is, I think the second form is basically like a great sword.
Yeah.
And then you have the one big axe. There's the scythe that you can use. The Blade of Mercy, which is like 2 tiny little daggers, so it's very, very varied, which is nice, and I really enjoy that. And then I have here, there's items you can use in combat, which I didn't use a whole lot, mainly like, I mainly used the papers, like the bolt and the fire paper on a lot of those Chalice dungeon bosses. I found those to be decently helpful. I mean, they don't give you a huge buff, but it's enough to help in those kind of battles.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So, like, and it helped in the way where, like, sometimes just a sliver of health is all that mattered for yourself in a battle. Like, should I use the, whatchamacallit, I'm thinking rings since I've been playing Souls, to, like, make it where your health is a little larger, or, because that one hit the enemy, or when, let's say you only got hit a little bit, but it's like, I'm going to go ahead and waste a whole blood vial, because that a little amount of health could matter. And I think it's the same thing with hitting the enemies. If you can do whatever you can to buff a weapon, even though, it's not like you're going to just incinerate them, but it takes just that much away where there's a whole sequence of events you might be able to skip by.
Yeah, that little extra really helps.
Yeah. So, and I think that's cool, and I'm with you there. That's really the only, I guess, item I used in combat,
At the very, very beginning of the game, my very first playthrough, I used Molotov cocktails a little bit, because at the very beginning...
Same here.
They're pretty powerful. But, I mean, by the time I was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours into the game, I probably never touched them again, so I didn't find a huge use for them after the very beginning. Like the Cleric Beast helps, and maybe Father Gascoigne, I might have tried that. That's basically it.
Cleric Beast for me, when I had a hard time with that boss. That was my entry into the Soul series, was beating Cleric Beast, and I used a lot of Molotov cocktails on him. Yeah. And then, so before we move on, because I think we're going to talk about visceral attacks real quick. So going back to items, so there's actually a lot of other combat items that you can use in this game that, like, I never really used. So there's the, and I forget what it's called. I actually have everything up here that I wrote down. But the, it's not a blood vial, but it's another item you can throw to get enemies that
Oh yeah,
to attract.
the blood cocktail, I think.
Yeah,
100
that's right.
blood
Okay.
cocktails or something like that. Yes, yes.
So
I totally forgot about that.
and so reading, and I never really used them at all. And so
I don't think I
reading,
used it once.
yeah, reading later, there's, I guess not high level players that are like really good and they can just go in and defeat a boss. But I guess for someone that's even a beginner or a slightly advanced player, I saw that there were areas that's very useful. Being able to just throw one, distract the enemy, distract enemies.
Yeah.
And I never did that. And I think that's, looking back, I think a game like Bloodborne has so many less items than the Souls series. But
Yeah, it
even
definitely
in like
does.
Dark Souls 2, near the end, I realized, oh, now I'm using all these items that I didn't even use the first half of the game.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a standard game nowadays, if there's items you can use, the game is going to throw you into a scenario where you have to use that item.
Yeah.
And then
exactly.
you're like, oh, okay, then I know what this does. Whereas, the Souls games are like, hey, look, there's a bunch of tools for you here to use. You might have to test them out, figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can use them. You don't have to. Totally
Right.
on you.
And then so, again, there's no magic in this game, but it does have some items that I never used that I guess require leveling up arcane. Is that the stat in this game?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, for instance, a call beyond. Like, apparently you can, like, shoot out, stars, exploding stars or something.
Okay.
Like, that's crazy. I'd never done that. Like,
No,
but-
I don't think I've used any of them once.
And then there's Beast Roar. That's like a area.
Yeah, that's like the only one I see online that people say is like worth using. You can like kind of push guys back and like if you're near a ledge, like push them off of a ledge or something like that. But again, I never used it.
And then like think of maybe that could have been effective with Shadows of Yharnam. Think of like what if you could have like kind of pushed the guys back.
Yeah.
If they were getting too close. But there's other items that I would love to, when I play again, see if I can, get my character to an area where I can make use of them and see if that kind of changes the gameplay. I mean, I don't know if this is just another one of those scenarios where the Souls games are kind of just being, very vague on what you can do, or did they just really do a bad job implementing these, these items?
I feel like it might be a little bit of both. They clearly didn't take as much time to do anything with like the magic. There's like the hunter tools they're called, which are basically the magic, like the beast roar, like we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they fleshed those out enough. Like I don't think you could go through the game as like an arcane build. I mean, I guess you probably could. I'm sure people have, but it didn't seem nearly as viable considering there's only, I think, 9 of them, and there's not a lot of situations to really use them. So I think it's partly they didn't utilize them correctly or just didn't really care about them that much. And then part of it is I'm sure there's certain ways to use every one that would be helpful if you could just figure out the situation to use them in.
Yeah, right. And then maybe we'll see something more with the DLC, who
Sure.
knows. But, okay, so... the next cool part are the visceral attacks, and, to get into that, the game has the Quicksilver bullets. So you get 20 of them at a time, and unless you pick them up or, you go to the Hunter's Dream to replenish.
Yeah.
But with the Quicksilver bullets, at first sight, it's like, okay, I have a gun I can use, and you realize it doesn't really do much when you shoot. You're like, okay, this gun's not really taking off much health. But the main gameplay mechanic of this is to shoot at the right time when an enemy is attacking to essentially parry and riposte.
Yeah.
So, and then that's just another tactic and a really good one to use that's in Bloodborne is the parrying. No more shields. It's just all about parrying. And that's something that you don't have to use a lot, but I think it is very effective. And I think it should be something that is used a lot. Have you ever been in a scenario where you were able to shoot just for the sake of taking off damage and it worked?
I haven't. I know people use that cannon
That's
and
right.
use the
Yeah.
they use the bone marrow ash, I think, like to buff it. And if you get your blood tinge stat up, you can like do good damage.
That's right. Yeah.
I've never used the gun for anything other than just.
And so that's something else to think about. So the use of arcane in this game is pretty vague, and is it done right or not? I think it's almost the same with this gun, because it seems like that can almost be like like 3 builds in this game. It could be standard, just your fighting build, your strength build, and then there could be a magic guy, and then there could be your ranged guy. So with the guns, using blood tinge, and then there's, you press up on the D-pad, take some health away, give you some bullets. So it's like if you use that correctly, it seems like that's another whole viable like character build to use. But again, maybe the purpose of that is to make it make that the challenge for we were talking about how can they make it more challenging, these games more challenging, the sequels. So maybe there's like these hidden builds, like there's these items like newcomers can be like, well, what do you do with this? But really, the developers have like these hidden builds you can get access to.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, one of my favorite things with this game is when you parry, you can like go up to the guy. In parrying them, basically you shoot them at the right time when they attack. They drop to their knees or whatever, and then you can run up to them, press R1, and do the visceral attack. And then you can also do this when you run up behind them. And I mean, I'm sure that's a tactic you like using.
Yeah, I find that getting the backstabs, like using the charge attack when they're turned around, is pretty tough to land because a lot of enemies don't stay turned around very long.
Right.
As far as like parrying, I use it a lot. Not as much as I used to. Like on my first playthrough, I probably did it a lot, but I haven't done it as much on my second playthrough. But there's definitely a lot of great places to use it, and they can, they're just a nice boost to the combat, and they can be used favorably in lots of situations that you find yourself in.
Well, for
boss
instance,
battles and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay, so that's a good point, because like there's these little known ways you can use visceral attacks in boss battles. Okay, so I forget which boss this was exactly. I want to say it was in one of the chalices. It's one of the bigger monster looking guys, humanoid shaped monster guys, where I think as he was attacking me, I hit him in the head with a charged R2. Or, I don't even think it was a charged R2. I really think I just hit him in the head at the right time. And he, I don't know what you call it when they're in that visceral mode, but he pretty much dropped into visceral mode, and I'm like, what? And now I missed it because I wasn't expecting to do that. Yep. But then I noticed with some of these bosses, you can actually do that. You can, if you hit them in the head, or if you hit them at the right time when they're coming at you, it doesn't have to be a charged attack. You can get them into that. So not Bloodstarved Beast, I'm sorry, Cleric Beast. So this is something I learned by watching videos that allowed me to beat the Cleric Beast. And you can watch the video on my YouTube page when I fought him. Basically, I walk in, shoot him 3 times in the head, and he drops down for visceral attack. So that's an interesting tactic for that boss, that you can use. If you want to, you could be like, okay, 3 shots in the head, and then he will eventually do his healing move, where he's kind of like healing that, and once he does that, you can do it again. Yeah. And I think it's really cool that they add different ways to use that in the game. And I guess that leads to strategies for certain bosses. So there's my strategy right there. What's something that you have?
I thought about it for a decent amount today. I have 2 here that I guess I can really talk about. I will say, first of all, in general, I find that if you have a fast weapon like Stake Driver, the Saw Blade, the Blade of Mercy, you can really just get up close and just start wailing on the bosses and wear them down. Doesn't work for every boss, but the game encourages your aggressive play, unlike most of the other games. So that kind of style I find is good for Gascoigne, Ebrides, Dark Beast Parl, and Vicar Amelia, and I'm sure there's others as well. But don't be too hesitant. Don't be afraid. Just run in
Yeah.
really start wailing on them. Two specific strategies I can talk about on bosses are actually both Chalice Dungeon bosses. The Keeper of the Old Lord, or Old Lords. The like witch-looking lady that has she's got a sword and she has she's got fire. In the Defiled dungeon, she was almost the toughest challenge in the whole game, besides the Watchdog, who was also in the Defiled dungeon. You can continually visceral attack her and get her kind of stuck in a pattern where she swings her sword around a lot. So she swings her sword, get a visceral, she'll fall down, you can attack her. And then when she gets up, she'll almost always, but not always, immediately swing her sword again. So if you time it right, you can hit her as she's swinging, so she'll fall down again. And you can kind of drive her back to the walls, and then she'll, fall, get up, swing, you can do the visceral, and just keep doing that until she dies. I could never get that strategy to work for me because she doesn't always adhere to that particular pattern. Mm-hmm. I know people can do it. I've seen videos of it, and there's also a bug I found that I actually had read about, and I've seen other people talk about. If you do that and you try to visceral her against a wall, if she's against a wall, she'll teleport from where she's standing up through the ceiling, and she'll be on the top of the boss room, and you can't touch her anymore, and you basically have to just end the battle. You have to, use an item to leave the arena because you can't hit her anymore, which happened to me, which I have a video of on my YouTube page as well, because I thought it was so ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I want to bring some up real quick. That reminds me, I fought a boss where that happened. It was one of those dogs, the giant dog guys.
Yeah.
It's something that can run at you or run at the wall or something, but I remember him going through the wall, and then nothing was happening. I was just standing there what's going to happen? And I waited a good 5 minutes.
Oh, man.
And he died.
Really?
Yeah, he died, and I was able to...
Oh, wow.
I wish I recorded my stuff like you are. I got to go back and do that. But, so, what was your tactic for that boss then?
I'm trying to think. I beat her twice. Well, I think I beat her 3 times. I recorded 2 of them that I put on my YouTube. The first one, I was using the Hunter Axe, and this was still the Defiled dungeon. I basically... let me think. Just dodge through and around her attacks and, hit her as she, after her attacks are done. When you get her down to maybe half health, she buffs her sword with fire, so every time she swings her sword, fire shoots out. And at that point, I basically I dodged around all the fire and waited until she did another attack where she just kind of blows some fire, and you can dodge through the first one and get a couple hits on her. So I kind of did it like that, and it took forever. It wasn't the best way to do it. And the second one, the second one I did, which wasn't Defiled, so it was a little easier, but this goes back to my point of being aggressive. I had the stake driver, and I walked up to her and just slammed her around with it, and the battle was much, much easier that way.
Wow.
And I'm sure it had to do with having more health. It wasn't, in the Defiled dungeon, but so that's basically what I did.
Okay, and you actually bring something up that I think we meant to touch on earlier. So you're able to dodge through attacks, which is something cool with the Soul series in general. But it's something that sometimes there's an attack that you won't realize you can really dodge through. In the normal case, you would think you would get hit, but then it's oh, this is easy. So for me, Daughter of the Cosmos. Abredius, or I don't know how to pronounce that, but
no, I have no idea.
But I was lucky. I was one of the, I guess, lucky ones where that boss wasn't hard for me because I just happened to be sidestepping or dodging right when she was swiping, and I saw myself go through it, and I was like, oh, I can just do that. So I was always baiting that attack and doing that. Yeah. But go back to that boss real quick that you beat. I remember that one. That was hard for me, and what I did for that one is, and this is also for any humanoid boss. So the Thumerian Descendant, I did the same thing, is where you can and as any boss, really, they have a pattern, and you can get that pattern down. Sometimes if you first get to a boss, you don't know what to do. Just kind of watch what they do, okay? So some of them will have like these 3-hit attacks, okay? So for these bosses, I would watch them do that, and I would be at a certain distance that, like, by the time they were done with their last animation, I had already started my R2 charge on my Ludwigs. So then, as soon as they were done with their attack animation, and they can't cancel out of where they are, I'm then lunging at them with my charged R2 and hit them. And that actually is what got me through the Defiled Chalice, is by doing that. So, those Defiled Chalice bosses, I timed their attacks to where then I charged R2 them, but you know, thinking about dodging, if I was to be a little more patient, even though that sounds patient to wait for attacks, if I was a little more patient, learned when I could dodge through attacks, I could probably maybe charge R2 their back, you know, and then do a visceral attack.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
Yeah.
So for me, in the Defiled Chalice, the hardest boss for me, and I wish I recorded this, was Amygdala, Defiled Amygdala.
Yeah, he's tough.
I don't know why that was the hardest one for me, but, like, that's when I was like, fuck it, I've gotten far enough in this game that I needed that platinum. But anyway, what I ended up doing was, man, it took me a while. I just had to learn, more than any other boss, learn the pattern.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of waiting. It's like I wasn't always attacking. I was just waiting a whole lot, and I don't like to do that.
That one has a lot of waiting.
What you were talking about earlier was, and I think this is very important for newcomers of the series, is like, be aggressive with bosses. Go up to them, attack them. You need to be aggressive. If you leave them open for attack, they will do some crazy shit on you. So with Amygdala, though, you kind of don't have a choice.
That's one of the ones you really can't be too aggressive. You really do have to wait.
Yeah, the wide arm, I mean, the attacks are so wide. Her arms. You have to be back, and you have to kind of just wait. And oh man, that was a pain. But anyway, anything else for bosses, boss strategies, or
for bosses, I have another one for the Chalice dungeons.
Okay.
I found Abhorrent Beast to be quite difficult, and I have a very difficult time killing them even now, even in like a normal non-defiled kind of dungeon.
And that was the one that's like just really fast. He's not humanoid, but he's not gigantic. It's like,
no, he's bigger than you. He's a little taller. He's like a big like hairy monster, but he's like kind of got electricity like flowing around him.
Right.
And he's super fast, and he throws combos like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 hit combos that are tough to dodge. So I found from a friend on Instagram, Weeba. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He actually gave me the strategy for the Keeper of the Old Lords that I just talked about, and this one for Abhorrent Beast. Okay. Just throw poison knives at him. It takes a long time. This is totally opposite of being aggressive.
Yeah.
Throw a poison knife at him. It'll hit him. The poison will take effect. It'll bring down his health, and then you just kind of run around the arena, dodge his attacks, stay away. When the poison knife runs out, throw another one, and it does take a long time. But if you really are stuck and you really need to get through a fight with him, it's a viable strategy.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because that is kind of something I've read with bosses where you can really just do that, and it's cool that that's possible. And I remember that boss. Now that you're bringing it up, it was one of the fastest bosses in the game, I think, when it comes to attacks. It reminded me of Father Gascoigne when he's a beast, and they might be related beasts in a way, where Abhorrent Beast is kind of the same beast as Father Gascoigne. But anyway, with that, I remember it was almost like what I was just talking about. It took me a while to figure out the pattern, but it was always like going to its left. Like, after some attack, going to the left and attack. God, thinking about these boss battles, no other Souls game has really done it where I beat the boss, there's this rush of warmth going to my brain, and I stand up, and I'm like, yes, I did it. Man, I need to take a break from these games so then I can get those feelings back, I tell you. But anyway, Yeah, so okay, moving away from bosses, let's talk about like areas in general. What are some like well, like I'll bring up so Nightmare of Mensis, or I forget what the actual Nightmare of Mensis. Anyway, that's the one that is where there's the brain, the main brain can give you frenzy just by you walking outside. Okay, and when it starts off, there's a few of those beasts, those tall, lanky beasts.
Yep.
Sometimes say they're werewolves, but they're just tall, lanky beasts. And you get to a point where there's a bridge, and there's some rock formations you can hide behind. Then there's a bridge, and then there's rock throwing guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I was like, man, what am I gonna do to get past all this? So I was like taking my time killing the beasts, and then I was using an item, okay, that I was like, I'll just use this for the first time, see if it does anything, and it did nothing. And it was the it's possible it was the blue elixir, because it grants stealth. Now it says while not moving, but I'm just like, fuck it, I'm going to use it anyway. So I was using the blue elixir, like maybe it won't see me, it won't give me frenzy, but no, that didn't work. What ended up working is I just ran past everything.
Yep.
I ran past the beasts, I ran past the rock throwing guys. I went in there, and then when I get in there, I'm like, fuck, there's all these little dudes running around, but then they were nothing, which was weird.
Yeah. Yeah,
but,
that area's a pain.
I think that's, for Nightmare Mensis, in my opinion, because I think it's easy to get to that point and be like, fuck this.
Yeah.
When you start getting that frenzy, you're like, there's no fucking way. I'm fighting these. I'm in a nightmare place, and if you happen to get to the other nightmare area, you're probably already scared, and so you know what to expect. But that's something to think about. If you guys are there or stuck, just run to those doors.
Yep. Absolutely.
And what about for you? What are some area tactics? Okay.
Areas. I found I had a bit of a difficult time remembering all of my tactics for the areas, and I don't know if that's, well, part of it's because my memory is just horrible.
And we're old. We have kids. You know how it is.
Well, yeah. And I think part of it is just because I found generally, if you want to, you can kind of just rush past a lot of the areas, which, I mean, maybe you could have in the other games, but this one you really, if you know where you're going, you can just run. And in my first playthrough, I obviously didn't do that. I explored the best I could.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to find everything. For my New Game Plus playthrough, I really did kind of just run through a lot of the areas. And although part of that is because I also started a new game with my wife, and we were at like the same area, so I didn't want to have to explore the same area twice. So I figured we would explore the areas together, and in my New Game Plus, I would just run through. That has nothing to do with anything. However, Old Yarnum, to make a short story very long,
okay.
for Old Yarnum, I find a pretty good strategy to use is to just run from the beginning straight to the machine gun guy at the top of the tower that I talked about earlier. His name is Dora, I don't know how to pronounce it. And then just get up there and kill him. He's not too hard. If you have the blunderbuss, you can just get to the top of the ladder, and as soon as you get there, just shoot him a couple times, and he'll usually fall off the edge, which is how I did it.
That's how it happened
to me
every time.
Twice. Yeah, so he's not too hard. So just rush right to him, kill him, and then you're free to explore the area without having to worry about that ridiculous machine gun fire, which is a huge hassle. Because the first time I went through the game, I didn't, know where he was. I didn't know how to kill him, in an efficient way. So I'm trying to hide behind walls and kill enemies fast and dodge all this machine gun fire that's raining down on me from this building. So I think that's a pretty good tactic for that area. That's the one I always use now, at any rate.
Yeah. That's funny that you bring that up as a tactic, because I guess I'm just bad, because every time I try that, and maybe I'm going the wrong way. It's where you land, and then there's you can jump down, and there's some wooden planks around, and then there's, not only are there enemies, the standard enemies in that area, which I forget what they're just little beasts, but then there's also the crows off to the right.
Yeah.
Anyway, that area, every time I jumped down there, I would just die. I could, not for the life of me, get past that. Because, yeah, that's the same thing I thought of. So eventually I would, I'd have to go get my blood echoes, and then I could get past it. But, yeah, I would do that same thing when I was playing my new game pluses. In general, that is a really cool area, uniquely designed, especially with that, I guess it's a church or whatever that's in there.
Yeah.
It just seems
that part is awesome. That big kind of church with it's got like a big giant monster like flayed.
Yeah, and there's like a ritual going on, but and then once you get out of there, and when you're coming back through the shortcut, it's like 3 different, completely different areas, but in a rather small area. It's not like it's a huge area.
Yeah, it's not big.
So that was a well designed place.
Yep.
And it was an optional place.
Yes.
Yeah. So this brings back a lot of things. I was talking about how I beat Cleric Beast, and that was like my rights into the Soul series, beating the Cleric Beast the way I did.
Yep.
So Central Yarnum, I probably spent more time in that area than any other single area.
Yeah.
Okay? And it ended up being like we've talked about, where I leveled up myself to a point to where I was like, okay, I'm actually getting pretty good at knowing where's what. I just need to get to the boss, so I'm just gonna run past the bonfire guys. So that was a big major turning point for me when I realized I could just run past the bonfire guys at Central Yarnum. That's when everything clicked, and I was like, okay, I'm getting this now. I'm getting this. Now I just have to find that shortcut.
Yeah.
And then it just made sense. I was just running past everyone, and getting to where I needed to get to faster. It's very interesting to see if there are, obviously there are, but just the idea that someone could spend hours and hours and hours, just normally going through an area, slaying enemies.
Yeah.
Getting to a boss, but then there are people that, even in their first playthrough, that are vets, they're like, fuck these guys, I'm just going to go run to the boss.
Yeah.
And you were talking about it earlier about if this happens in the other Souls games, and I just remember playing Dark Souls, and it was getting to the Gaping Dragon.
Yep.
I ran past everything. It's not as bad, with the shortcut. Honestly, it's really not that bad now that I'm even thinking about it even more. But for me at the time, I remember that was like, I'm just going to run. It's just kind of hard in Undead. Is it Undead Parish? No, before Undead Parish. Undead...
Undead Burg.
Burg,
like
there you go.
The very beginning.
Yeah, it has a lot of narrow passages, and it has, and it's harder to just run through that. Like, it was built almost where you really just can't run through. You're gonna have to kill on the way. But yeah, in Bloodborne, it's another beginner tip I like to give people if you're trying to get into the game. Don't be afraid to just run. My new game plus and plus plus, I was just trying to get other stuff that I didn't have, and I really just ran through. I mean, I cannot believe how fast. In my new game plus plus. It's funny because I didn't realize a weapon I was missing until new game plus plus. Or, new game plus plus. It was in the Upper Cathedral Ward. Is that what it's called, or is it called something else? Where it's an optional area.
Upper Cathedral.
I needed the badge for one of the weapons, and I remember starting the game again, and I'm like, shit, so... As much as I like this game, I really just want to get the last trophy, and I have to get all the way there. And, dude, it took me maybe a couple hours. I don't know. I just remember I did it, really fast in a couple days. I just, hauled ass. Now, to be honest, I did do the glitch to get to the Forbidden Woods, where at the beginning, where there's the big axe-wielding guy that you normally just don't fight, he's back by. You can run and jump onto a fence if you time it right, and then you can then run and jump over the fence, once you're on the fence, into the shortcut from Forbidden Woods. And then I went through there to quickly get to Rom, and then so I could get the key from then I had to go through freaking what is the hardest place? The village? What is it called?
Yeah, the Unseen Village.
Yeah, Unseen Village. The hardest place in the game. I had to go through that just to get the key for upper cathedral. I'm like, ah, shit, and I did it. It made it worth it.
It's amazing how, I mean, I guess this is pretty obvious, but how fast you can go through the game and how short it really is if you just kind of like run. Because your character is pretty fast, and there's not a lot of like narrow kind of areas where you can't avoid enemies if you know what you're doing.
Right.
So
and I was gonna say like but at the same time, like, do you think that someone would have to know the game in some way first, or do you think a newcomer that's just a gaming vet, could just like run through it first time?
Probably not.
Okay.
I think if you've never played a Souls game and you pick up Bloodborne for the first time, you're probably not just gonna run through and know where you're going. Even if you're like good at other video games, let's say, because Bloodborne and the Souls games aren't like basically any other video games. Right. So you definitely need a knowledge of the level layout and enemy placement and obstacles and things like that. So I don't see anyone that's ever played a Souls game being able to do that. Even someone that's played Souls games, it's a whole new game. Everything's different. Yeah. Levels, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I ran through some areas on my New Game Plus character. I ran through, like, Forbidden Woods. I ran through that as fast as possible because I had no desire to spend 5 hours in there trying to find every damn item. So I was like, I'm just going to run through that. I actually ran through Kaner's Castle pretty quickly because I just wanted to get to the boss so I could record that for my YouTube channel. What else? I'm at the end of my New Game Plus playthrough. I haven't actually beat it yet, but I feel like I went through the game pretty fast compared to my first playthrough, which obviously took me a pretty good amount of time.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Cause that's reminding me, Forbidden Woods, man. Just running to Shadows of Yharnam, like even if you open the shortcut, it's like
it's still a pain in the ass.
Yeah, because it's just there's a place you can jump down, but like you have to go a little further. It's like the kin. There's a few kin there, but like, that was still a well-designed area. Just because it sucks, you don't want to be there. That means they did a good job designing it.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. There's one more thing I can think about when you were just talking about running away from, or running through, like Central Yharnam.
Yeah. The hunter guy.
Yeah. My wife and I are currently playing, and we are in the Unseen Village.
Oh, okay.
We need to beat the One Reborn boss, which I have beat him a couple times in my other playthroughs, and
I saw that. You made it look so easy.
The easiest boss in the whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are having the worst time fighting him. We've probably tried together, I don't know, at least 20 times, and wow. I bring it up because, there's those 3 hunters inside the big cathedral that you have to kill, and then there's like these big giant like weird skeleton amalgamations that like shoot blood at you. So we've just been starting from the second lamp in the Unseen Village and just hauling ass from there all the way to the One Reborn fight, and we've still been tripped up on that for whatever reason. I don't know what the hell the deal is, but that's another area that we've just been running through. It's so annoying.
Yeah, and a good tactic for that boss actually is killing the bell maidens at the top.
Yeah.
They're hearing that bell. That's like horrors. But for me, that was actually an easy boss. The first time I got to it, obviously the bell maidens were a surprise. And I'm like, oh, fuck me. I'm like, I'm going to die anyway, so I'm just going to take in the sights. Let's look at the animations. Okay. And then that second time, I remember when I'm thinking as the screen's loading, I'm like, okay, where was that lamp at? And then I, appear, and I'm like, oh, shit. I have to go through all this.
It's pretty far.
But then I ended up beating him on the second try. I killed the Bell Maidens, and after that's pretty easy. It's just really about dodging at the right time.
Yeah.
With the attacks. Yeah. But no, I watched your video, and yeah, you're right. You just have to just attack with that weapon you've got, because it works.
Yeah.
And then I think you were even getting him to a position to where he was it's like he's knocked out or something, and then you go to his head and you start.
Yeah, this goes back to our conversation earlier about viscerals. I think it's just if you attack him enough, he like falls over and he like is incapacitated for a couple seconds. So you can either just keep hitting him, or you can go to his front and hit like the main like skeleton that's riding on top of him, and that like does extra damage.
Wait, there's a skeleton riding on top of him?
Well, the boss is like this big giant.
Well, right. Well, that's the thing. Like when I picture the boss in my head, if someone said, "Hey, draw what that boss looks like," I wouldn't even know what the fuck to draw. I would
that'd be very hard.
Get a pencil and like start scribbling and being like, "Well, there's some scribbles here. I think this is what the boss looks like." But I need to take time and look. I like the idea of a skeleton riding on top of a whole bunch of slave skeletons that are just like forming.
Yeah, it's like this big giant like blob of like dead bodies and like skeletons and stuff. And it might not be a skeleton. It's like a guy, but it's like he's like at the very top of it, and he's really weird looking. And you know what's funny about that battle is I beat it my very first try on my very first playthrough, super easy. I beat it on my first try on my New Game Plus. And the Bell Maidens that are up there, I hadn't read anything about them, but I knew to kill them because it's very similar to a boss battle in Demon Souls, which has a very similar mechanic. So I took my knowledge of the boss battle in that game, and I was like, well, this is kind of similar, so obviously I should probably go up and kill all these, these Bell Maidens that are, I don't even know what they do. Something bad, obviously.
Yeah, they send, I think they just send attacks to you. There's like these, if I remember correctly, there's like these red things start coming at you and hitting you. Like, I remember the first time I got to that boss, I'm like, what? But, you know how it is. Anyway, anything else we want to mention when it comes to strategies, tactics for Bloodborne? Anything else you think of?
I don't think so. I think that is everything. I think that's everything. I'm sure stuff can come up and we can do like a follow-up episode at some point. Right. Because, I'm always either remembering stuff or if I play, I discover new stuff or reading, watching, I mean, it's like it consumes you.
It does. And I think this podcast is going to play out like my interest is in the series. It's like, the first few episodes are very basic or general. Like when I play the games, I'm just getting a general feel of the games. But then as you get more into the games, there are specific things you latch onto and you want to discover more. And I think we're going to be doing that with a podcast. Later on, we're going to get into like specific things, get into it more. But I also want to add, for any vets out there or anyone listening to this that's gotten this far, I think this would be a good listen for beginners if they're having a hard time. They don't really want to watch the videos, because I would sometimes like to listen to someone talk about it instead of watching it, because watching it would almost give too much away, but listening can kind of hint at ways to do something. So I think this would be a good listen for anyone. So I guess that's it. That's episode 6 of the Soulscast, Bloodborne Tactics, and guys, see you next time.
Bye-bye.